From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Amarachi Ubani.
Good evening and welcome. Tonight, Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 rolls out incentives for workers in the front line of the coronavirus battle, including payment of over 100 million naira premium insurance cover for them. 10 more COVID-19 patients discharged from the isolation centers in Lagos, as Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu says the state will win the fight against the virus. Plateau State records first case of COVID-19 in a man who came into Jos, the state capital, from Kano. And U.S. COVID-19 death toll rises above 50,000 after recording more than 3,000 deaths in the last 24 hours, with over 870,000 confirmed cases nationwide. Plus business news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London.
On business news tonight, former Vice President of the World Bank, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, calls for global risk burden tax to serve as penalty for advanced economies when they cause a risk for developing economies.
On sports news tonight, Ajax Amsterdam FC denied the league title after the Dutch Football Association brings top flight season to a premature end.
And from Abuja, police officers who assaulted a lady in Osun State for allegedly flouting lockdown order dismissed from service after being tried and found guilty.
Health officials in the front line of the fight against COVID-19 in Nigeria are getting more attention as the Presidential Task Force announces a life insurance for them. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, Mr. Boss Mustafa, says the gesture is an appreciation of their sacrifices as the country battles the pandemic. He explains that a premium of over 100 million naira has been paid by the Nigerian insurance industry in line with the principle of no premium, no cover. This, among others, formed part of the conversation at today's briefing of the Presidential Task Force in Abuja.
Honorable Ministers, members of...
It is the daily news conference by the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19. This time, however, the Minister of State for Labour as well as the President of the Nigeria Labour Congress are attending, even though they are not part of the task force.
Government to please make his remarks. SGF, sir.
The chairman of the task force begins his address by informing the gathering about a life insurance cover for frontline health workers.
The insurance industry has responded massively to the call for support. The Presidential Task Force has received a life insurance cover to all frontline workers on COVID-19 for a maximum of 5,000 health workers who are employed to fight against the COVID-19 pandemic. The premium in the sum of 112,500,000 for cover has been fully paid by the Nigerian insurance industry in line with the principle of no premium, no cover.
So far, 40 health workers have tested positive for COVID-19. Little wonder that so much emphasis is placed on the need to adequately protect health workers.
I wish to use this opportunity to applaud our frontline health workers again in the COVID-19 pandemic. Salute your courage and patriotism, but I urge you to protect yourselves as prescribed and use your personal protective equipment judiciously. Do not attempt to treat COVID-19 patients without using adequate PPE, or if your institution is not accredited to do so. This is important because we need to keep health workers safe at such a time and cannot afford the numbers who test positive to COVID-19 and have to go into isolation.
I think it's important we try to emphasize as the minister said, the issue of scaling up occupational health and safety, looking at the number of health workers that have been infected so far. I think there is no gainsay that the health worker first need to protect himself before offering service to others. So I quite appreciate also the gesture that government is coming up with to try to support these frontline health workers.
The lockdown order by the federal and some state governments is one strategy to flatten the curve of COVID-19. Almost 4 weeks gone, citizens may need to make additional sacrifices to achieve the targeted result.
We're all working hard to get to the point where we can relax some of these measures, but we're simply not there yet. We will get to the end of it, but in the short term, we're asking you for some additional sacrifice.
Already, coronavirus has spread to 27 out of Nigeria's 36 states, including the FCT, since the country reported the index case on February 27th this year.
Meanwhile, there are assurances that help will be coming the way of Nigerians in the diaspora once preparations are concluded to bring them back home. That's according to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jeffrey Onyema, who again reiterated that Nigerians in the diaspora who wish to return home will need to just hold on a bit more. He made the comments during the daily briefing of the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today.
You can only evacuate when everything is ready here in the country. And we have Nigerians who want to come back from all over the world. You know, the numbers in UK alone is about, 2,000. And the simple fact of the matter is that we just don't have the isolation centers and the hospital beds and so forth and hotels to accommodate them all. We've been looking for hotels in Abuja and in Lagos. A lot of hotels clearly, feel that it would damage their brand, it would have some effect on their business. And so that's been a real problem for us now. You can imagine if they start coming back and then the numbers of positives and so forth start spiking, then the government will be now, blamed and said, but why did you, bring so many people back? So these are all the issues we're grappling, but hopefully we will find a solution to that.
3 new cases of COVID-19 have been recorded in Bauchi State. The new cases include 2 Lagos returnees and another official of the World Health Organization in the state. Health officials say the results of the cases were received from the Nigeria Center for Disease Control on Thursday. The World Health Organization official is a contact of an earlier reported case in the state. This brings to 6 the number of active cases in Bauchi State, where no death has been recorded. Some good news from here in Lagos. Despite the rising number of COVID-19 cases in the state, new records of discharged cases are still trickling in, the latest being that of 10 persons who have now tested negative to the virus. A state governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, said in a social media tweet today that the rising cases have not stopped the state from celebrating its successes. The discharged patients are 10 in number, 3 of them female, the rest of them male. This brings the number of discharged cases from the Lagos isolation centers to 117. Governor Sanwo-Olu is, however, encouraging residents not to relent because it is imperative that we win the fight against the virus. The story is different in Plateau State, where the first case of COVID-19 has been recorded. This is coming shortly after the state government relaxed lockdown restrictions for residents to restock for the Ramadan fasting. A state commissioner for health, Dr. Ninkong Ndam, says the index case is a man who came into Jos from Kano on April 17th and has been in quarantine since then. He, however, tested positive to the virus upon exhibiting symptoms and has since been isolated. He explains that the patient is stable and in good condition. The commissioner added that Governor Simon Lalong has called for calm and wants residents to continue to imbibe good personal and respiratory hygiene, social distancing and avoiding crowded places, as well as staying at home. Speaking of the Ramadan, Muslims the world over will be observing this year's fasting season in a different style owing to the outbreak of the coronavirus in many countries around the world. The change in the tradition and rites during the holy month may be a bit difficult for some people as government and religious leaders ask everyone to maintain social distancing and pray from home. Our next report looks at Ramadan amid COVID-19.
My fellow Muslim brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The annual announcement that activates Muslim faithful to prepare for a spiritual journey into self and kinship.
Friday, 24th April 2020 becomes the fourth day of Ramadan 1441 after Hijrah, inshallah.
During this period, Muslims throng mosques to pray. Proximity with the next person did not bother anyone. But that was before COVID-19. The call to prayer that would blare from the loudspeakers have been silenced. Empty mosques are a common sight. No thanks to the social distance order, which was forced by the coronavirus. How do Muslims in Bauchi State feel about this turn of events?
It is very, very unusual to see that the mosque is completely empty. In fact, even the imam is not here.
Actually, we have no option than to abide by the rules given by the state government and the health practitioners.
To ensure compliance, security agents patrol streets in Borno State where mosques are located.
Through all the mosques, they are all compliant. We had information in one place, one or two places, even the imam is here being invited in order to go and see the deputy governor. Maybe they are doing it, but on getting to the location, truly they are not praying.
Prayers. In Lagos State, the Commissioner of Police also calls on Muslims to be obedient to the rules during this time.
Let them know that this thing is real and we must continue to maintain social distance in order to make so the virus not spreading more. The first is going to assist reducing the spread of the virus.
COVID-19 may have altered congregation at mosques, which helps give a feeling of the Ramadan. But to every Muslim, it cannot stop the belief in their hearts to that which keeps them holding on to their faith during this time. Oroluwashoni Bare, Channels Television News.
We'll have more on observing the Ramadan fast amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, but we're still following up on the story of a Lagos resident who was robbed by the dreaded 1 Million Boys gang, carting away money, his car, leaving him severely injured. Now there's some reprieve for him as the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has reached out and asked his aides to pay the robbery victim and his tenants a visit. Our correspondent, Shiwoke Maloye, has more.
Battered and left for dead. The horror of the infamous 1 Million Boys gang terrorizing communities in Lagos and Ogun State has left bruises and sorrow. Mr. Bisi Adedire, an architect, robbed in the Meron area of Lagos alongside his tenants. Reprieve has now come their way after the 1 Million Boys gang paid a visit of terror. A different kind of visitation has come his way. After days of pain and anguish, the Lagos State government is reaching out to him. Elated, almost lacking words to describe the show of love and attention from the state governor, Mr. Adedire is full of thanks.
Thank God it is not that I've lost my life and this thing is happening behind me. It makes me to have hope and to instill hope on others that we have leaders that are caring.
Capturing his story on the news, he says, has brought him some hope.
And I really show my appreciation to your team too. Channel Television, people has been writing, calling me several calls here and there. But honestly, it's as if you are the Messiah that God has sent. Because there are a lot of people over there, they don't read newspapers. Even to watch video becomes an issue. But you serve as at a point where people reckon with and catch the information at a glance. It goes a long way.
The second round of lockdown is almost over. Government says it is working to ensure lives and properties are secured, but above all, staying safe in the face of the deadly coronavirus is paramount. Shonwa Kimbale, Channels Television News.
In part two, after the break, we'll be taking a closer look at Ramadan fasting during the coronavirus pandemic and the lockdown. We'll be joined on the news at 10 by the Secretary General of the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, Professor Ishaq Oluyede. Also, Abia Border Patrol team intercepts truckload of passengers as state begins tracing of over 200 contacts of 2 COVID-19 confirmed cases. Stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 rolls out incentive for workers in the front line of the coronavirus battle, including payment of over 100 million naira premium insurance cover for them. 10 more COVID-19 patients discharged from the isolation centers in Lagos as Governor Sanwo-Olu says the state will win the fight against the virus. Plateau State records first case of COVID-19 in a man who came into Jos, the state capital, from Kano. While the U.S. COVID-19 death toll rises above 50,000 after recording more than 3,000 deaths in the last 24 hours with over 870,000 confirmed cases nationwide. We also have business news from Abuja, the FCT, and later from our studios in London. Our website, channelstv.com, has more information on our top stories and others. Subscribe and watch Channels Television's live stream on YouTube and other social media platforms using your mobile device browser, or download the Channels TV app for Android and iOS devices from their respective stores. You can also watch us via your smart TV platforms on Apple TV, Android TV, Fire TV, and Roku. Earlier, we talked about Muslims all over the world observing this year's fasting season in a different style owing to the coronavirus pandemic across the world, where many cities are under lockdown. Talking about this change in tradition and rites during the holy month, and being joined now on the news at 10 by the Secretary General of the Supreme Council for Islamic Affairs, Professor Ishaq Oluyede. He joins us from our studio in Abuja. Professor Oluyede, thank you for joining us on the news at 10.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, and we do hope you have a successful fasting season. But these, of course, you'll agree, are not normal times, especially for Muslims around the world who have to cope with this alongside the coronavirus and the lockdown restrictions across many cities. How do you react to having these circumstances at this time?
Yes, it is part of life. It is not normal for everything to be normal. There is room for abnormality. We only pray that the abnormality will be transient and will soon disappear. So one should expect, if there had not been coronavirus, there could have been something else. So life is full of ups and downs, and one should expect that it won't be smooth all the way through. It's abnormal for everything to be normal. But when you have challenges of this nature, we have to pray and also act in a way that will shorten or ease the challenges posed by the special circumstance.
And would it affect, the as fasting season in any way, these lockdown restrictions? You know, a lot of people would love to be in the mosques to say the prayers at the end of the day, especially you found a way around that, meaning asking people to go to the nearby mosques. Can they stay at home instead and have the prayers, or must they also be in the mosques? And will there be provision for social distancing? How well are you preaching that message to members?
Fortunately, the religion of Islam is a religion that is applicable to all circumstances, very flexible, a religion. All the prescriptions of Islam are realistic prescriptions, and the flexibility of life itself had been built into the faith. There is nothing prescribed by God that God had not created leeway out of extraordinary circumstances. Once one has unshakable faith in God, every other thing could be accommodated. So our God is not in the mosque. It's God that is everywhere. The mosque is not a shrine. And therefore, our God answers prayers anywhere we are. The Quran is very emphatic about it, that you don't need to stand to pray. You don't need to sit to pray. Whether you stand up, you sit down, you lay, anywhere, when you call on God, God calls on you. And God answers your prayer. And that is why Muslims don't have a prescribed way that unless you do it this way, God will not listen to you. So when we worship, the act of worship is the prayer. Prayer is one of the acts of worship. And when you worship the canonical prayer, even that, God allows some flexibility if circumstances dictate otherwise. So prayer is supposed to be, particularly the obligatory prayers, are supposed to be said congregationally when the situation permits. But in this extraordinary circumstance, even the congregational obligatory prayers, the leadership of the Muslim community all over the world, not only in Nigeria, had recommended and directed that even the obligatory ones should be done within the family. It provides an opportunity for so many imams to emerge, rather than having just the imam in the mosque. Every Muslim husband, every person who is an adult Muslim, this an opportunity for him to be trained as an emergency imam, even if he's not trained. Because in Islam, closeness to God is not determined by the type of dress you wear, and it's not prescribed by just what you say you are, but you can be close to God without being a malam. So, and that is why it's an opportunity for everybody to know that even relying on other human beings, they may not always be there. You must have direct contact with God so that you can call on your God. It's not a God that is calling on you to have an intermediary. So this is an opportunity for Muslims to pray on their own, to lead their family, and the prayer will be as acceptable as the others.
And I'm sure that they are hearing your message at this time.
Money.
Professor Ishaq Oluyede, I'm sorry to cut in, but thank you so much, and I'm sure the Muslim faithful are listening. We all need prayers at this time. Thank you again for joining us on the News at 10.
Thank you very much.
While the enforcement of the lockdown directive continues across most states in the country, some persons who flout the directive are now being made to serve as a deterrent to others. In Abia, the State Border Patrol team today apprehended a truck filled with people during a stop-and-search operation. The driver of the truck told security operatives he was transporting essential goods. But after the truck was searched, the occupants, about 10 of them, were discovered. ordered out of the truck and arrested. Abia State recorded its first 2 cases of COVID-19 on Tuesday, while the state government says it is tracing over 200 contacts. We're back in Abuja now, where Linda Kigbe is standing by with more on the news at 10. Hi, Linda.
Hello, Amarachi. Now, the 2 police officers captured in a viral social media video assaulting a woman in the Iwo area of Osun State have been dismissed. A statement from the police says the officers were arrested, tried and found guilty of assaulting the woman who they claim flouted the stay-at-home order of the state government. Police authorities say the 2 officers, Mr. Abbas Ibrahim and Mr. Taiwo, will be prosecuted for the crime. In the viral video, the 2 policemen were seen flogging the woman and only stopped the assault following the intervention of some of their colleagues minutes later. The woman had made an open appeal to the Inspector General of Police seeking justice. And staying with reports on the lockdown violation, this time in the Federal Capital Territory, where the police command announced the arrest and arraignment of 1,909 persons for violating the order restricting movement in the nation's capital. The Commissioner of Police in charge of the FCT, Mr. Balachi Roma, says the command is intensifying efforts to protect lives and property in the Federal Capital Territory. Mr. Chiroma is also advocating the need for members of the public to continue to partner with the command in its fight against crime by actively participating in the policing of their respective communities. In the meantime, Kaduna State government has set up mobile courts to summarily try curfew violators as part of efforts to preserve public safety. The state Solicitor General, Chris Umar, says the decision was taken in the state Executive Council to enforce the executive order. The Deputy Governor, Dr. Hadiza Balarabe, had invoked the Constitution, Sections 2 and 8 of the Quarantine Act of 1921 and Kaduna State Public Health Law of 1817 and imposed a lockdown throughout the state on March the 26th. The Solicitor General says the mobile courts will deal with violators summarily without the need for the present cumbersome procedure of taking offenders to court over such violations. The Ebonyi State Governor David Umahi today inspected the ongoing 300-bed isolation and treatment centers for infectious diseases, especially COVID-19 pandemic. According to the state governor, who spoke through the State Commissioner for Health, Uwezurike Daniel, the isolation centers located at the Alex Ekwueme Federal University Teaching Hospital in Abakaliki is about 85% completed and will be ready for use soon. He explains that the project started about 4 months ago.
As of present, we don't have any confirmed case of COVID in Ebonyi State, and we have tested about 160 samples from Ebonyi State and over 60 from nearby states. We don't have the right to report their cases, but all the ones we tested in Ebonyi State tested negative. So we have done quite a lot to ensure that we don't record any case of COVID-19 in Ebonyi State. But we are also preparing that, God forbid, if we record any case, that we should be able to contain it. And that is what we are doing. In a week to 2 weeks' time, because everything, all the fittings are already on ground. You can see how fast people are working here day and night, to ensure that all the fittings are installed. Everything for the completion is already on ground, just to install them.
When the News at 10 returns, we have more updates on COVID-19. Plus, former Vice President of the World Bank, Obi Ezekwesili, calls for a global risk burden tax to serve as penalty for advanced economies when they cause a risk for developing economies. That's in Business News. Join us again.
Welcome back. The Ekiti State Government Task Force on COVID-19 has given a directive that no corpse will henceforth be allowed to be moved into Ekiti State until further notice. The state government explains at a press briefing in Ado-Ekiti that the difficult task of immediately detecting the cause of the death of any corpse at a border checkpoint makes the new order imperative. The task force confirms that the first COVID-19 patient to die in the state has been buried. The victim came into the state pregnant and was delivered of a baby through cesarean section before developing cardiac arrest, which later led to her death. The state government promises to arrange for proper care for the surviving baby. Meanwhile, more donations are coming in to help government fight COVID-19. The latest from the Ikoyi Club 1938, which donated relief materials to assist vulnerable persons lessen the effects of the pandemic. The chairman of the club, Mr. Abayomi Orenuga, describes the gesture as the club's way of providing support to the community. Our correspondent, Austin Okunakpan, reports.
The COVID-19 pandemic has stopped sporting activities at the Ikoyi Club 1938, but it did not stop its members from showing love and care in this difficult time. One of the values of the club is using sports to achieve community development, and that explains why they are donating these food items to support people within the council area. The relief materials were handed over at the local government office to be passed on to those in need.
We've been here since 1938, so we are probably one of the oldest partners or oldest citizens in this local council. So we see it as an opportunity in this pandemic period to give support to the people of this local council as well as the local council itself.
What this COVID-19 has shown to us in this country is so glaring that we need to be our brother's keepers.
The chairman of the LCDA, Fuad Atonda Lawal, thanked the club for the love and confirmed it is good support to the daily feeding program.
This is the perfect time for them to come. So we're expecting, or we don't know yet, if there's going to be a further lockdown. But with what they've done today, I can say to you that we can continue feeding members of our community for the next 2 weeks. And for me, it's a win-win situation for the council and for the club as well.
Pending when activities will resume at the Ikoyi Club, these officials are making good use of the lockdown to put smiles on the faces of people. Austin Okunakpan, Channels Television News.
Just a quick break from COVID-19 stories. The National Judicial Council has suspended 2 judges. They are the acting president of the Customary Court of Appeal in Imo State, Justice Francis Abosi, and Justice Aliu Liman of Bauchi State High Court with immediate effect. The decision to suspend the judges was taken during the NJC's 91st meeting held online on April 22nd. Justice Francis Chukwuma Abosi was recommended for compulsory retirement following the falsification of his date of birth from 1950 to 1958, having discovered that he was supposed to have retired in November 2015 when he attained the mandatory retirement age of 65 years. The council also made a recommendation to Governor Hope Uzodimma of Imo State to deduct the salaries he had earned from November 2015 to date from his retirement benefit. Justice Aliu Liman of Bauchi State High Court was recommended to the Bauchi State Governor Bala Mohammed for compulsory retirement over his failure to deliver judgments in a suit between Abubakar Issa and Sheikh Tahir Bauchi within the 3 months period stipulated by the 1999 Constitution, having held on to the said judgments for almost 4 years. The CJN has also constituted a 10-man committee to come up with urgent practical strategic measures to be put in place in order to ensure courts continue to function despite the lockdown and COVID-19 challenges. 9 months after the murder of Mrs. Funke Olakurin, the daughter of the national leader of Afenifere, Pa Ruben Fasiranti, the police today arraigned 4 suspects at a chief magistrate court in Akure, Ondo State. According to the charge sheet, the suspects face 4 counts of felony, to wit, murder of Mrs. Olakurin, murder of one Ogumbiyi Matthew, and kidnap of one Gerald Ibwayaka. The suspects allegedly shot Mrs. Olakunrin dead on July 12, 2019 at about 9 o'clock in the morning at toll gates along Ore Ijebu-Ode Expressway. After hearing the case, the presiding magistrate, Victoria Bob Manuel, adjourned the case until June 3, 2020. If the conversation on debt forgiveness or moratorium is based on external loan portfolio alone, then the potential benefit to Nigeria is limited. That's according to the Director General of the Budget Office of the Federation, Mr. Ben Akabweze. He told Channels Television in our program, Politics Today, that the 2020 budget makes provision for only 60 billion naira in debt servicing for external loans.
This whole discussion about debt forgiveness or debt relief is really focused on the foreign, component of the debt and not the entirety of it. As far as I know, the multilateral lenders, the World Bank, and even the IMF, right now there is no commitment for a debt relief or a debt forgiveness. At the last G20 meeting, the IMF and World Bank heads, counseled the, bilateral creditors to consider debt relief for, the poor, countries. And for us, even in our budget for this year, the totality of debt service on bilateral debt is maybe about 60 billion naira. So even if, we got all of that, waived or whatever, deferred, that's the totality of the impact. So that's not really where the solution for us is going to come from.
Let's get more business stories now from Bisi Adebayo.
Welcome to Business News. A former vice president of the World Bank, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, is advocating for what she calls a global risk burden tax as a penalty against advanced economies when they cause a risk for developing economies. Dr. Ezekwesili told Channels Television today that this is to avoid a repeat of a big crisis such as the COVID-19 pandemic, which has dealt a serious blow to the vulnerable, especially in Africa.
Every time an advanced economy engages in a way that creates a risk for the rest of the world, and the poor and vulnerable suffer the most from it, and yet at the end of all of it, there is no accountability, there is no consequence for that particular negligence or lack of taking responsibility on the part of an advanced and powerful economy, leaving the poor to suffer. There will be a repeat. And I am interested in us not repeating this pattern, because the poor pay dearly for the negligence of the rich. And my argument is that because of this, we need to now put in place a global risk burden tax. So it's a penalty for bad behavior on the part of the rich and the powerful when their action affects the poor. So that's my argument. It's a very strong argument, and it's an argument that enables Africa to assert itself, not to go begging, but to assert itself that it's suffered an injury and therefore must be paid a reparation for the injury that it has suffered.
And the International Monetary Fund and the World Trade Organization have asked countries to halt for the restrictions of export of food and medical supplies. In a joint statement released today, the two organizations described the move as dangerously counterproductive, with the most serious effects likely on the poorer and more vulnerable countries. Both multinational agencies say the move could cause disruptions to supply chains, misdirect scarce and critical products, and worsen the health and economic crisis already caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. A joint technical team to fast-track the movement of food and agricultural inputs across the country has been inaugurated. The technical team comprises officers of the Nigeria Police Force, Civil Defense, All Farmers Association, and the National Union of Road Transport Workers. The Minister of Agriculture, Malam Mohammed Nanono, who spoke at the meeting, appealed for the cooperation of state governors to allow for easy transportation of the agri-goods. And the Nigerian stock market ended today's trading session with a 0.57% quick rebound, recouping about 67 billion naira from the profit taking recorded on Thursday. Here's Temple Ashaju with the rest of today's figures.
Thank you for joining us on the Stock Market Report. The equity market recovered some of the losses in the preceding trading session to close uptick by 57 basis points today. Now, this means some 67 billion naira addition to the equity capitalization, which still hovers around 11.7 trillion naira. Now, you got the banks remaining the major drivers, inclusive of GT Bank, on the list of top trades, while other sectors closed the week bearish. Activity level was mixed, with 211 million units of shares traded for 2.23 billion naira in 3,957 deals. Keverton blazed the trail on the gainers chart as chemical and allied products came at the tail end of things. That's your stock market report. I'm Temple Ashaju.
And that's it on business news. It's back to Amarachi.
Thanks, BC. Still ahead of the news at 10, U.S. COVID-19 death toll rises above 50,000 after recording more than 3,000 deaths in the last 24 hours. And more from our London studios and around the world in 5. Stay with us. Welcome back. More tributes are pouring in for the late Chief of Staff to the President, Abba Kyari, this time from the Archbishop of Canterbury, the Most Reverend and Right Honourable Justin Welby. The Archbishop, who has been a close friend to President Buhari for several years, said he recognised that the Chief of Staff is a role on which one depends more than almost any other, noting that occupants of that strategic position need to be trusted and willing to have your interests most closely at heart. According to the Archbishop, the fact that the President entrusted Abba Kyari with his messages to him and to others demonstrates the faith the President has in him. The number of COVID-19 deaths in the United States has risen beyond 50,000, according to tally from the Johns Hopkins University. While it still has a lower mortality rate than most European nations based on current counts, it's by far the highest death toll and case count in the world. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump says his widely criticized suggestions that coronavirus could be treated by using ultraviolet light or disinfectants inside the body were sarcastic. And the main news again, the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 today rolled out incentives for workers in the front line of the coronavirus battle, including the payment of over 100 million naira premium insurance cover for them. That's it on the news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I am Amarachi Ubani. Good night. Stay safe.